Well, rereading Mendelev's um, text, Attempt Towards a Chemical Conception of the Ether, he speculates that the ether is 1/millionth the weight of hydrogen. In order not to be affected by the gravitational forces of the sun and the stars, permitting it to be evenly distributed throughout space and permitting it to interpenetrate any substance heavier than itself located in space, so that it becomes all permeating, and it's its lightness that gives it that capacity for interpenetration and even distribution. But it is a gas. He likens it to a gas. 1/millionth, 1 part per million, the weight of hydrogen. And that's essentially what it boils down to. So, what does this have to do with weather modification or free energy for that matter? I mean, something that won't be attracted by gravitational forces yet obviously are attracted by conic shapes? Why? Or by the electrical activity of various inventors. But I wonder now how much of the ether really figures into so-called free energy devices, because it may not even be necessary to invoke the concept of the ether. It could be that the ether is a different concept than the concept of so-called free energy, because energy accumulation is usually the functional role of any device which purports to be free energy. In other words, it costs energy to accumulate energy, and that's nothing new. It costs energy to run my ceiling fan with convex mirrors attached to it, so I'm not, it's not totally free. I have to pay for that, or my landlord pays for that, and he paid for the ceiling fan. So I just took advantage of the situation by attaching convex mirrors to the ceiling fan, to the blades of the ceiling fan. Yeah, we may be mixing things up. Now, the conic shape, which is really 1/2 of an hourglass, is the eye of the needle that the camel, to fit the camel through, because that's the narrowness junction point between the two apexes of two cones whose two apexes are touching each other, pointed at each other, in which something gets reduced down in size to a very small degree before it can come out the other side. And it's a challenge. It's I think it's called a durga. It's that door that you have to go through that is a test, because it's not automatically easy to go through it. You have to get scaled down, pared down, so to speak, into your simplest form, which I guess would be the ether. So that's why the cone represents the ether, or the attraction of the ether, because the cone is 1/2 of an hourglass, and it's that shape, the hourglass, that is the functional equivalent of the ether, or the attraction of the ether, in as much as the ether is so small it would have to fit through the eye of the needle that Christ talked about. That's it. That's what the hourglass, aka double cone, represents. Because anytime you create a cone, you create an inverted cone pointing at it as a kind of ghost image based on a reaction to the presence of the cone. So you don't really need both cones, with their tips touching each other to make an hourglass shape. All you really need is one cone, and that infers the other. And by having both in any event, that's the eye of the needle, which represents the smallest chemical element, 1 part per million the size, or weight, I should say, of the hydrogen atom that Professor Mendeleev talks about, Dmitri Mendeleev. So, there you go. That's why the cone works. Now, churning it is interesting. Why would rotating cones be of any use to churning an ether which has no attraction to gravitational mass? And why would a geometric shape take the attention of the ether in any case? Attract the attention. These are all very worthwhile questions, is to try to understand, well, why would a ceiling fan with convex mirrors be of any assistance in creating good, vibrant health underneath it, or above it for that matter? I don't know. It tires me out just thinking about it. I don't know. I have to admit, I don't know. Well, I made a tiny URL for the main book that the appendix called Attempt Towards a Chemical Conception of the Ether is contained within, and it's tinyurl.com/chemether. So that's CHEMAETHER, and that'll be a direct download link. But there's an excerpt from that, which is the actual file in question, that is simply the appendix, that short 60-page treatise, and I should make a shortcut to that. So just a minute. Okay, I made this shortcut. It's kind of like the other one, only it's missing the A, so it's tinyurl.com/chemether, but the ether now I spell without the A. So it's CHEMETHER, and this is the excerpt, which is all that's really needed, and it basically expands to an archive.org URL in which they have archived this text of Mendeleev, this excerpt from a much larger text that he wrote, which is just an appendix from that larger text. So you don't have to download the whole big text. You can just get this excerpt, and it was published in a separate book form, which is very interesting that was done. It was that important that they separated it. So that's cool. Really, really cool. I love it. So now we know that the ether is a chemical. It's just so lightweight that gravity does not affect it, and it thus can interpenetrate all materials in space. Yet how do we engage with it? This we'll have to find out. Or how is it that we can, using the techniques that we've been taught, for instance, by Trevor Constable as a very simple example. The stuff that Eric Dollard teaches us is a bit more over my head, and of course it's more practical because it has to do with power generation, or for that matter what John Bedini does. I found an interesting set of links on Energetic Forum. This Chinese research scientist discovered that if you take, it was so fascinating. He knew exactly about negative resistance and how you can have energy go back to the source from the load. And let's see if I can find where I found that. Here it is. It's see, I should make a link to just this. This is so fascinating. So, it has to do with retarded phase and single wire transmission. And the quote is, when the current is phase inverted relative to the voltage, it's so technical. But it makes sense. I've heard of this before, having to do with the watt-hour meter and trying to get more energy out of it. It's basically, they're defining negative resistance in terms of phase relation. So let's see if I can make a tiny URL to it, because it's very interesting. Alright, let's see, what should I call this? Retarded phase. Okay, So I'll call it something with regard to retard phase. Retard phase. There we go. So at tinyurl.com/retard phase, you can put a hyphen in between the two words or leave it out. That'll bring you to a post at Energetic Forum by Wings, somebody who calls themselves Wings, on September 2007. Or no, that's when he joined, excuse me. It was on October 9th, 2012. And he has 4 links, 4 PDF files at a website, vixra.org. And these 4 links all talk about the retardation of a wave and how to do it so that your source, so that your load ends up sending electrical energy back to the source. It's very interesting. And this is what sent me on this quest. I've been going all over the place looking at other things, and it's just taken me all over the place. It's unbelievable. Anyway, I thought I'd share that with you. So, there it is.